Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the MM360 Global Movement Special Series. We're calling it Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I am your host, STJ, as a lot of you know me through social media. And I am here, of course, with my one and only, my co-host, JD Yusef. Good morning, Yusef.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me again.
Of course. As a reminder, these series goal, or we are aiming to promote mastering a unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs in order for you to get empowered and fulfill your dream as an immigrant. Whether you are a first-generation immigrant or first-generation American, or you are trying to displace yourself from one community into the other within your realm, within your home world, or venture altogether from your home world into a new world. And what we do on this series is to share our stories and share our experiences and allow you, the listeners, and the watchers to end up with your own conclusion and your own decision whether you want to do or go through this process or go through this journey. And we're not trying to discourage you or push you. We are just enlightening you with our experiences and our stories. And hopefully you'll be able to make the right decision for you and your family and your community and your mental health too, which is one of the things we tap into in order for us to understand the impact of such a journey on our mental health and well-being. So without further ado, let's plunge right in, shall we? All right. Yeah. Any first thoughts about anything before we start?
Only initial thoughts are, I'm glad we're having this because it's going to be thought-provoking, going to be emotional, and trying to give also a little insight with some facts as well. So I'm excited.
Yes. I'm so excited to uncover and discover the tools and the lessons and the how to, champion our challenges with the data that Yusef has to present to us today. All right, so I was watching a video about the impact of our belief system, whether it is built in our home world or it has been modified in our new world as an immigrant on our life and consequently on our well-being and on our mental health. In the previous episodes, we have addressed the impact of our traditions, our customs, our leaving all that behind, whether we decide to simulate in the new world and resulting into acculturation in the new world, or as a displaced by default or displaced by design. Now, when we talk about displaced by default, we are identifying the displacement due to extreme circumstances, traumatic conditions to the displacer. And that includes famine, includes lack of opportunity because of war zones, before of, political conflict, because lack of resources, the poor economical status of that home world that is not offering a lot of opportunities, a lot of resources. Some people are okay with that. Somehow they make up a way to survive these conditions. But the majority of people, they want a better life. They want an easier life. They want to have civil liberties. They want to have a right to decide for themselves and to decide for their family and the future of their children. And that's what we're going to discuss and hopefully back it up with data. So what I got out of that video, I'm going to read it to you, so just make sure that I'm accurate. It says here, and I'll quote, "Our belief systems are truly fundamental in terms of how we operate in our life. We see our world through the filter of this belief system." And that is a huge statement that just struck a chord in me, because this is exactly what I have been trying to discover for the past 3 years. And that's the reason why I hired a life coach, in order to help me understand what I was going through. For some reason, I start going through the nostalgia for my homeworld, melancholy, memories, and just reliving a lot of those memories. Now, they tell you that when you hit middle age, the dust settle in your life, everything is, you accomplish as much as you want to accomplish. And that's why you started to reverting back to all these emotions and all these memories and reliving, because you just starting to say, okay, I've done it all. Now I miss home. I miss my home world. So that struck me. And then, of course, that's a process that I had to go through the past 3 years with my life coach, in order to reset my values, because I was still carrying those beliefs that really orchestrated this life that I call, or this achievement that I call, my work, my businesses, and so far and so on. So what do you think of that, Joseph?
So that's very interesting that you say that. If I can add a little value in a broader sense, belief systems help individuals navigate the complexities of new realities, especially when the new world feels overwhelmingly different or even threatening. The belief systems act as a lens through which the world is interpreted, providing structure and meaning. So I think you kind of exemplified that in a real world sense based upon what I just read. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, let's go through the belief systems that we think about. A belief system is like your app on your computer or your app on your phone. We have a plethora of apps that we can purchase, and we think that application of that app is going to serve us and serve the phone, and as a result serve us with our busy as our lives are, to facilitate the communication, to support the data, to save memories like photos and stuff. So think about that belief system. It's that app we chose to purchase, even not as children. I think you start questioning things, at least I did. I start questioning things when I was in 8th grade, a little bit at a time. But when I got to high school, I was questioning a lot, because you have the knowledge and you have the experience and you have the stories, whether you heard it from your grandparents or extended family, and you start forming your own beliefs like, this doesn't make sense to me. This does make sense to me. And then you save it in that app, what we call the belief system. And then you build on that, right? You build that experience, because experts tells you that if our belief system is, for example, the traditional gender role expectations. I'm a female, but I believe that every female job or role in life is, seek education, but also satisfy and make her family happy, find the right suitor, be happily married, participate in continuation of the family lineage in the family way, and reproduce and raise, decent, good, happy, peaceful offsprings. But that, if I believe that's my belief system, right, that's the app that I purchased, and that's embedded into my heart, into my mind, that is the mindset, right? Whether some of us, different on the personalities, takes or perceive that belief system as a limiting to my mindset, doesn't serve me, then I'm going to drop that belief system. I'm not going to buy that app. I'm not going to incorporate it in my, mind, which is basically your computer or your phone, because I don't want that app. So I'm going to start shopping for different belief system that matches my logic and make sense to me, that's going to serve me well and help me mastering an unlimited mindset in order for me to achieve what I need to achieve, right? So if I, for example, at age 17, 18, and 19, I had 3 arranged marriages, 2 royalty and 1 a billionaire son, okay? My belief system had a priority. And the app that I decided to incorporate in my mindset is basically, no, I want to be a dentist first. Yeah, I would love to meet the love of my life, get married, and be happy, to have a life partner. For me, marriage is partnering with somebody that's going to share my life, and I'm going to share my life with him, and to live happy, to exchange ideas, to share memories and experiences and travel. That was life part. That was marriage definition to me. It wasn't like I'm a wife, he's a husband. My duty is to, have kids and also juggle the career and life. And that wasn't my belief system. That was not my app, right? So dentistry was number 1. Number 2, if I meet the right person and I fall in love, then I will marry that person, or I will share my life with that person as my life partner. So I took that belief system, but it says also, if I have that belief, I'm going to attract that idea and that experience and that process in life. Those are what the psychiatrists are telling you. And that's how you shift your mindset. You go from limiting to unlimiting mindset. Then I start attracting opportunities. Then you start attracting people. The first thing I did, even before dental school, I ended up getting married to my husband before even I got into dental school. That wasn't the plan. But it was part of my belief system that if I meet the love of my life, I will marry that person. And I did before dental school. And I made it happen, made it work, because I kept the belief of dentistry is still my ultimate goal. Whether now or never, I am going to become a dentist. And I did, and I achieved both. And I've been married for the past 32 years. God bless you, Yusef. You have met him, you worked with him. And he is a piece of work, but I love him. So do you relate with that? Do you identify with that?
So I think, Dr. Slava, I'd like to know what influenced you respectfully to kind of, I guess, hold these beliefs. I mean, were they different from your parents, or were they different from your cultural expectations?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Thank you for that. My parents were a very interesting couple. Like I mentioned in the previous episodes, my mom was the matriarch of the family. My dad was not involved in raising the children, not because he was traditional. He just traveled so much to provide for his family because he had a belief system that told him to build as much wealth as possible, as fast as possible, which he built it by age 45. He started at 27, and by 45, he just had enough money to retire, to support 5 children, to send all these 5 children to school, educate them and feed them and own properties, but to fulfill his dream by becoming a world-renowned writer. Okay, so he almost like, and I might have, now talking about it, I might have picked that up from him. He still got married to my mom. He still provided. So getting married was the first thing. Second thing, because it's an obligation, responsibility, and expectations. And then he worked, his way up to become an executive, and did very, very well with his multi-generational wealth from properties. And he learned that in Jordan, and he applied that in Saudi Arabia. And then he became a writer. His passion was writing. My passion was dentistry. So I saw that model. Now I recognize that model, but back then I didn't recognize that model. I thought it was a belief system that I picked up on my own. But yeah, right? I had a model that I've been experiencing, and I lived it and watched my dad. And I am more trait-wise, personality-wise, I'm more like my dad than my mom. My mom was very tribal. She was pro-education. She was passionate about children, welfare, the children being our future. She was really very progressive in the way she approached education for children. And she brought a lot of different modern modification to the way things were taught, even in Saudi Arabia. And of course, you can read it, and everybody knows it. The systems, the education system in Saudi and all the Gulf world, all the Gulf countries, was actually established by Palestinian educators and Egyptian educators. Even if you walk down the street in Saudi or Kuwait, and you'll ask them, it's like, who were my best teacher was a Palestinian teacher. My best teacher was an Egyptian teacher. They had that passion, and they had a very good understanding how important education, early year development education, if you teach them the right way, they're gonna prosper and be very, very successful. So I got that from my dad, I think. It sounds like it's the parallels are undeniable the more I think about it. But my mom was constantly the one that is reminding me of my, traditional gender role expectations. Yeah, it's great. She used to say, I don't agree with you being a dentist. I want you to be go to school for art history and live in the museums all your life, but also get married. I'm like, Mom, that doesn't make any sense. I can't be traveling the world, also marrying into a Saudi, that I'm obligated to stay in the country, raise those children, because those children are going to be Saudi citizens. I can't just go around, travel the world, and spend my time, restoring art pieces. I would love to. So she supported me for seeking higher education, but constantly reminding me at the same time, don't forget, we need to get married. Don't forget, you need to satisfy that gender role expectations. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And so what it sounds like to me is you had this clash internally with your home, your nuclear family, but also, what did that clash look like from your traditional conservative upbringing, the society, and then kind of going into very opposite, right? So that was certainly a clash as well, it seems like.
Yeah, there were a constant debates in my household, not because of me as a girl, but when we realized that we were banking, us the children, all 5 children, we're banking on, by the time we graduate from high school, we would have had our Saudi citizenship. Then it's limitless, opportunities, unlimited opportunities, unlimited, ways of achieving our goals, because we have the right as a Saudis to go to medical school, which I don't know about now, but back in the day, in my day, if you're not a Saudi, you couldn't even attend professional school, which is medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, law. Not much law. It was more like Islamic law institutions. But also philosophy and psychology were forbidden to be taught in schools. I'm not sure about now, but back in the day in Saudi. So we looked into, like you said, our nuclear family. In our household, it was very democratic. It was very liberal. It was very free of thoughts. You can express yourself. But when we were outside of that household into the Saudi community, we had to bite our tongue. We have to conduct ourselves within the code of conduct and what is acceptable, because we were related to the Sudair family. So we had that pressure. So when I voiced my opinion or my belief system, or shared my belief system, I was very careful, right? And I was very considerate of how I present that belief system to my parents, because they are a different generation and they were coming from a different background, or they were just parents that had certain expectations from their first daughter, which is huge back home. I'm not sure about your family. The first, especially if you have the only daughter, there's a lot of pressure on her. But I'm the first daughter, so they tried to raise me and train me, condition me to take over, to transfer the power to me when I became the matriarch of the family, which I am now. This is my position right now. And that's why I had to go through 3 years of reestablishing my values and my beliefs in order to serve me in my new role as the matriarch of this family right now. But yeah, it was very interesting. It was clashes. My mom comes from the tribal end of Jordan. My dad is Palestinian Jordanian. So he's a lot more into, like I said, human rights, equality, inclusivity, tolerance, humanity, civility, civil rights, all that stuff. My mom was fine with it, but with limitation. My mom constantly had to tone it in because she always had the flair of the traditional tribal connection. She had to keep that alive. And that could be her belief system, that it was important for her to keep it alive within her children in order to survive, in order not to lose that attachment to Jordan. But the funny thing is, she never had the interest, nor she ever showed any effort to go back to Jordan until my dad passed away, which is very, very interesting. But that's another story. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. That's actually very fascinating and very insightful. So thank you.
Yeah. So can you share with us any data that would support this theory that our belief system, and through the lens of our belief system, we are basically orchestrating the life that we think we want, or we know that we want? Any data or any facts?
So in regards to the way your family balanced this cultural act, right? I have something, this is why some immigrants hold on tight to their belief systems, right? So in many ways, immigrants, especially those who are displaced by circumstances, often hold tightly to their belief systems because they represent a sense of continuity and security, to your point, Dr. Slava, as a safety mechanism. In a world that feels unstable or foreign, beliefs are deeply tied to identity, and when everything else around you changes, language, culture, social norms, your beliefs serve as a familiar anchor. So I think that's fascinating in and of itself, right?
Yeah, especially, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what you think of this thought, because you were never displaced from your homeworld. You never experienced displacement in the sense of rejection displacement. Your parents did, and your grandparents did, right? You are first generation American, Yusef?
Correct.
Right. So you were born in California. Now we live in Alabama. Displacement, but you were displaced, but you were very young, from California to Alabama. Those are totally two different worlds in culture and customs and heritage too. So I'm sure from your end, knowing what your grandparents and your parents went through and how they were displaced, I'm sure you go through stages that you're trying to even conceive the struggle. Do you? Or just, are you like Ehab? Ehab came here. My husband came from Egypt. He was born in Egypt. He was here when he was 2 years old. He was never displaced. He doesn't know what rejection displacement feels like, or forced displacement actually looks like.
Yeah, that's actually very, very fascinating. And I've seen both of these kind of at play here as a first generation American with, other first generation Palestinian Americans, right? So what I've seen is, if you have a strong bond to not only your family, but your culture and your language, that's kind of what makes everything that my parents, grandparents, ancestors relevant to me, right? It's a way of connecting to, their source of hurt and their source of comfort, right? We learn through these stories. But I've also met many first generation Americans. They're very content and humble with the status quo. They just want to be kind of left alone as it is, right? They're not very big into the culture, the language. Your religious identity also has something to do with that as well, right? That's another cultural thing that's a kind of an anchor weight as well. So, but I've seen two different dynamics, right? And not to say that one is better than the other, but as far as connecting is what we're talking about at the end of the day, right? So no, I've never been physically displaced, but I have a strong connection to the homeland, right? Or I should say, so much strong that we would love to go back and have some sort of property, or have something like the other side has. They call it aliyah, where it's just an educational experience, right? Learning about your people, learning about your land. So I hope that shares some light, shed some light.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, if I may. When you talk to your generation friends, people within the scope of how you grew up, around the other Arab families, you have family in Detroit, right? You have families around the United States. What do they say? Do you guys talk about that at all? Do you compare? Because the fascinating thing that you guys never lived in the Middle East, right? So, but yet some of you guys have such a strong yearning, innate, strong yearning, emotions to the homeland. And that's fascinating to me, because that's how strong our belief systems that we inherit from our seniors, the seniors in our family, that they are so good at relating, sharing the stories and the memories in such a vivid details that you guys feel like, I want to go there. That's fascinating. That is the power of storytelling. That is the talent of conducting a memory to a level that you are actually making somebody that's never been in that world that wants to go and feel that they belong there. So if you can answer the first half of that question is, do you guys talk about that? What's the feedback from your generation and the first generation Americans that never been to the Middle East?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, it's going back to, what does your household prescribe to? I think you said it best about that app, about downloading that app. So for our family situation, displacement meant trying to figure out this new world and not trying to stand out. But that also meant not taking on 100% of the new culture, because there was a clash in our house, right? And there was a strong sense of my grandmother trying to protect her children, right? And so the culture was strong, the language was strong. Growing up, that was also passed on to us. So we heard about these stories about back home. We heard about these atrocities, right? We heard about the beautiful times as well, right? So again, if you're able to tap into that, so unlike the majority of my cousins, they weren't able to tap into that because there was a language barrier, right? So there were certain things that they couldn't take out, or they I don't want to say missed out, right? But again, it was a matter of pulling out this information. So I was very, very blessed, to say the least, but it was very, very strong to answer your question. So it was brought up constantly. there's pictures everywhere, there's flags, there's a constant reminder. Our culture is very, very deep and beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I remembered what my dad used to tell me all the time is he's so funny with that stuff. When he when he used to get inspired to write, he'll write for days. We won't see him. He's just a hermit, just like any artist, right? Just shut himself in his office to study and write.
Right.
For 3 days, he comes out very joyous and full of ideas. And he's like, "Come, sit next to me." And he's like blowing out cigarettes, chain smoking, right? Blowing a cigarette, sipping on his, believe it or not, scotch. Yes, he did Jack Daniels in Saudi. I don't know how he got it, but he got it. He was very well connected. So he's just sipping scotch. It's like, "Come sit with me. What's going on in your life?" I'm like, "Dad, what's wrong with you? Like, you've been gone for 3 days. I haven't seen you for 3 days. He hasn't eaten for 3 days, but now he's accomplished so much. He created so much that he wanted to take a break and land on his 2 feet back into reality to kind of touch base with him. But he used to philosophize. My dad loved philosophy about life. And he used to tell me that be disciplined like the German, be driven like the Americans, be clever like the British, be elegant like the French, be passionate like the Italians, but always be beautiful like the Arab that you are.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And you know what? I had this in my app, my belief system, all my life. But last week, I just wrote it down for the first time on paper. But that just surfaced for some reason. I don't know. Maybe I was going through, nostalgic memories because I'm going to Egypt for 2 weeks. The first time I go back to the Middle East since 1991, believe it or not. So it's a lot of emotions brewing, and that surface, right? You start tapping into that. Oh, let me go through my archives and see what I have, like what my dad used to tell me and stuff. But the reason why I mention this, because regardless of how proud Palestinian my dad was, but how liberal he was, he still always remind us that be a child of the world, right? Like all these clever, smart, elegant, passionate, he actually referenced to the West, right? But beauty, he always referenced to being an Arab. And he always told him, don't ever forget who you are, where you came from. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how big you get in your head or in reality. It doesn't matter how much you accomplish. Don't ever forget where you came from. That is fascinating for somebody like my dad, who traveled the world, who wrote, 30, 50 books that were translated so many different languages. He was a political analyst in so many channels. He was on CNN at some point before he passed away. To actually still his core believes, I'm still an Arab. Nothing better than an Arab. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that. My dad was an atheist. He did not believe in organized religion. He did not believe in structured religion because his belief system told him that if you tie yourself to organized religion, that's too limiting to your creativity, right? Because that's going to limit you from expressing your ideas and your theories as a creator, as an artist. So belief system, he created that become part of his app, right? That is a mindset app that do not follow any organized religion because it's going to limit my creativity, and I'm an artist and I can't have that done. But that's his belief system. But regardless, the bottom line, the end of the day, do not forget don't forget that you are an Arab, and don't ever forget where you came from. So that's like fascinating to me, because now his quotes are becoming part of that mindset app that we call the belief system that I have as an adult, as a 55-year-old, business owner, doing this podcast, being a public speaker, being on social media. I am actually tapping into those archives and rebuilding a belief system that has a lot to do with what my parents used to believe. So all I'm saying is that application, that mindset app that we call the belief system, it can be changed. It can be modified. It's okay to be modified. But of course, we're going to tap into the guilt because I went through it. When I decided to change a belief system that's not serving me anymore, it served me very, very well the past 36 years, but it's not serving me anymore. I had to go through emotional crisis because I felt like I'm betraying my family. I'm ripping my roots. I am saying that, my family beliefs don't matter. My ancestry don't matter. My heritage doesn't matter. So that's why I chose to go through the process with a life coach to validate to me that, Slava, you don't have to be that or the other. You can be both. And that's how I created the hybrid, what I call the hybrid belief system that I have now, hopefully to serve me in this last chapter of my life. So does that answer your question?
That does, and it's very empowering. And if I can add a little bit to that, if you don't mind. So for some, creating new belief systems can be a form of empowerment and growth. Immigrants or displaced individuals may feel the need to adapt to their new environments by reshaping their worldview to fit the new society. This could mean integrating aspects of the host culture or creating a hybrid belief system, so like you said, that blends the old with the new. Creating a new belief system or adopting one's existing beliefs helps individuals feel in control of their circumstances and ensures that their survival, again, that's a common theme that's been coming up, that their survival and thriving in the new world isn't constrained by the limitations of an outdated or incompatible belief system to further the new agenda. So that's literally what we've been saying all along. That's amazing.
Wow, that is amazing. And honestly, I'm not sure if is that an article we read or not, but I've been, accumulating all these values as it's like, okay, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work, this works. And I said it before, being a displaced immigrant by default or by design, whether you are getting displaced within your home world or you're displaced from a home world to the new world, there is such thing as the impact of that change or that journey or that process on our well-being and our mental health. And depending on the culture you come from, some cultures do not recognize the impact on such circumstances or such process on the mental health. Some societies do, now they do, I think, but my generation, we never did. We drew our confidence, our value, our validation, our confirmation from God. I remember going in high school when I start really questioning a lot of this stuff. It's like what we are learning, especially in Saudi in high school, you are heavily bombarded with religion. And there was a lot of, especially Wahhabism religion. Of course, there's Islam, and then it's like Wahhabism, which is extreme, very more like a Bedouin-focused traditional Islam and their customs and their habits. And I got to the point, it's like, okay, Islam is part of me, it's part of my culture, it's my religion, that's my heritage, that's fine. But when I got to high school and I had to I felt the pressure of I needed to simulate to the more, not extremist, but much more conservative lifestyle and beliefs as they were teaching us in the Wahhabism way. And that's when I said, and I went home and I had my dad who was so liberal. And it's like, oh, women can do, he's a feminist, he's out there completely. And it was a clash of two worlds. My home world inside my house was very much Jordanian, progressive, Palestinian heritage. And then I went to school. It's like Wahhabism, Saudi. And I'm like, that's not what I want. So I told my parents, I'll finish high school. I'm not staying here. Although I spent the first year of college in Riyadh and part of it in Jeddah. It just happened that way. But I ended up leaving. So when I start questioning that, there was a struggle inside of me. I felt shame, and I felt that I'm betraying my family, that I'm not, I'm betraying my Saudi part of the family, my cousins, and my uncle, Mishal. because for me, not accepting that belief system, I felt like I'm rejecting them. And how can I reject them? Because I am the product of, rejected displacement or displacement by rejection. So how can I reject something that was given to me? I should be grateful. I should be thankful. So when I used to tell my mom, I can't deal with this. I used to be so stressed out. I developed panic attacks in school. I started to stutter in high school. I was top of my class, what the hell is going on? I didn't realize that mentally my mindset app was being my mindset app is being updated. Now I know this. I didn't know that back then. So when I used to go tell my mom, this stuff doesn't make sense, she used to tell me, go pray. God is going to help you calm down. God is going to show you the way. God is going to help you figure this out in the best way he can. So we drew a lot of, again, validation, confirmation from our spirituality. And that's huge. I used to fast for Ramadan. I used to pray 5 times a day. We used to go to Mecca, Umrah all the time. I never been to Hajj. So the custom of worship, right? It was part of my belief system. So I always went to prayer when I got stuck. Now I took that part of my app, my belief system, and I took it with me to the new world. But unfortunately, the new world lifestyle, it was very hard to keep up with that. I'm still very spiritual, and I do turn to the divine power trying to give me wisdom, but that's just a private thing for me. I don't follow any certain religion, but I pray in Arabic, and I pray the prayers that I learned every single night. But that update to my mindset app, which changed my belief system, it was hard. And it took a toll on my mental health for a while. And I thought that by coming to the United States, I would be able forcefully, because I didn't have a choice, because I had to, assimilate to the Western culture, maybe I'll forget about praying. Maybe I'll forget about that spirituality. Maybe I'll find another tool or another source that I can draw strength from it and support from it. It was a struggle, though. It was a struggle for years. And, I got married right away. I was 22, 23 years old when I was 19 when I met Ihab, and then I got married at 23. So I went from my, being under my parents' care to I'm married now. I have a husband, support, And I didn't have the chance to feel like I wasn't on my own for that long, right? I went from undergrad, my parents, getting married, my in-laws. So I always had support for that. But I'm sure that I'm not sure in your nuclear family, Yusef, is that the case? Do they constantly tell you, go pray? Or did they encourage you to reach out to other human resources, mortal resources to support you in your, trying to figure this out?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, because I don't think it's as unique, right? So, coming as displaced people, my family's trying to survive, right? So, it was told to us, a priest in the community said that the Arabs aren't as faithful. They're actually one of the most faithful, but they weren't plugging into the system like they should have been. As again coming over here, and again we're coming from an area of the world where these Abrahamic faiths were born. So we're probably more educated upon kind of what's going on, right? But at the same time, coming to a new world, it's hard to survive. Learning about insurance, learning about how to get licensed and registered, and so personally in our family, very, very spiritual, my grandparents still dressed up every Sunday, whether they were going to church or not, they just still dressed up, right? Because I guess that was still what they did back home, but again, survival mode, period. So.
Yeah. So you as Yusuf, first generation American, with a Palestinian Christian household, where do you draw your strength from? Where do you draw your motivation and your validation from?
So it's definitely from, again, growing up, hearing about our land, our ancestors, our history, but also the faith that was passed on to us from our ancestors, right? So, and these are things that Western Christians would not understand or would find different, right? So unique in that respect, right? We followed all the holidays, we did, all the religious stuff, but we didn't go to church every Sunday, right? But also that's a problem to many Christians. So, having to balance this in our household, just didn't really pay much attention to that, right? We were trying to learn and teach within, right? So, and if anybody could add any value, then great, right? And usually that's from the community. So once coming over from, the motherland, you look to two things in your vicinity. You look to your faith and you look to your community. If your, community's not there, then you just kind of, go to the faith thing and try to, basically benefit and reap what you can from that. So that might not even be your faith that you came from with. So like, for example, my father's side of the family, I think were involved with the Protestant Baptist form of Christianity because they were helping, immigrants and displaced people, giving them free things, right? So, that's also an interesting conversation for another time. But yeah.
That's really, really interesting. Now, that said, do you feel all through, I'm not sure at what age do you realize that, oh my God, I have to balance both worlds? Do you remember how old you were when you came to that realization?
So I think I felt it more ironically from my move from California to Alabama. Not that I was, prescribed to the California culture. I was young, right? So I didn't leave the home much. I did start, some sort of schooling out there. But at that, my schooling was predominantly Spanish speaking. So that's also fascinating as well. So coming to Alabama, I'm Palestinian American, first generation. Arabic is my first language, obviously speaking it at home. And then second is Spanish. So I'm coming to Alabama, so that was interesting. But again, I didn't feel like I was different until fifth, sixth grade. And that's where I just started asking more questions, why aren't my parents invited to these outings while all the other parents are invited? Or, just little certain things started kind of appearing itself. I guess they were always there, and I'm just now taking notice, right? So.
Yes, they're surfacing right now. Before it was part of like every day, just, going along with your day, trying to survive as a child. But now as you wait until you hit middle age, a lot of things going to surface. You better be ready. Now, what can you share with us? Do you think that was an impact on updating that belief system app? Are you still updating? Are you constantly updating? Or for the most part, fundamentally, it's still the same? You're very young. You're only, 33?
Correct, 33.
Yeah, so going through, you're a lawyer, you just went through law school. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I think we may potentially always be in a process of adapting, right? Surviving. Coming, you mentioned the legal background. The law is ever changing, right? So you always have to, keep updating yourself and, so you can effectively know how to operate and serve other people. So I think I think it's an ever-growing process, and that was actually one of my last questions that I had for you, Dr. Slava, is maybe to ask the question in a different way. Do we ever fully adapt to a new world, or is the process always ongoing? So I'll pose it to you.
So this is a fact that expert and psychiatrists and psychologists tells us that, and I do incorporate this concept in my business model since 2013. And they tell you that every 5 years, it's highly encouraged and highly advisable and highly recommended for every adult to sit with themselves and review their values and review their beliefs. Because science will show you that every 5 years, I don't care who you are changing. Your circumstances are changing. Your role in life is changing. Your responsibility is constantly modified, whether less or more. Your status, financial status is changing. Career status is changing. Your role in your family is changing because you're aging, right? You are going through the process of advancing in the years. And as you go through life, you're adding different experiences, different people, different inspirations, different journeys, different stories, different lessons. So every 5 years, I had to sit with myself, and as a business owner, as a dentist, as a healthcare worker, as a leader, as a mentor, as managing my team expectations, managing my patient expectations, and the world is changing around me. So dental expectations by patients is very different today, especially after COVID, compared to the 90s or the early 2000s. So I had to, not only for my own personal growth and to fulfill the different roles that I am embarking on or are becoming part of, to recheck and check again every 5 years. And I do take a test, which is the DISC personality style test, every 5 years. I take it with the application of me being a dentist, a business owner, not as Slava, as just socially or leisurely as a friend or as a neighbor. But for work, I have changed from the time I started my career, or I started as a business owner when I was a partner in 2002. So I took it every 5 years. So I highly encourage everybody, whether you are thinking about displacing yourself, or you have been displaced, or you already established yourself in the new world, to check with your belief system app, right? Which is the app of your mindset. How are those beliefs and those values, whether they're serving you or not? But you can't categorize those values. Is it personal value? Is it heritage value? Is it traditional value? Is it career value, education, life, family values? There's so many different values. So we need to spend time with ourselves in order to identify, define, redefine those values in order to become more successful. And like you said, in order to survive, not only survive, to thrive, to be empowered, right? To fulfill your destiny, or the reason why you displace yourself, or the reason why you got displaced. I mean, I displaced myself because, thinking back, if I didn't have the 3 arranged marriages that have been pressuring me, probably I would have gone to Jordan, to be honest. I would have been in Jordan, married Jordanian, and just lived there, and maybe end up somewhere in Europe. But things happen for a reason. I rejected those 3 arranged marriages and escaped all that world. I just left it behind. It's like, I don't want to deal with it because they're just not getting me, right? And my values were changing, and they were solidifying and maturing before my eyes, to the point sometimes I wasn't even recognizing myself. I said, who am I? So you have to rediscover yourself. You have to uncover all that, old systems. It's like, okay, what serves me, what's not? Call this, keep that. What's serving me, what's not. I need something new to serve me. You can recycle through the values too and put a modern twist to it. Like you said, westernize some of your values, within moderation, keep it neutral, keeping it impartial, and just have that as a lifestyle. But it doesn't mean it's set in stone. When you leave, regardless of the age that you leave your home world, when you leave and we settle in, right, it's constantly changing because this is the way. Like the Mandalorian would say, this is the way, this is the process. So you have to trust the process. But that's why we're talking about this, because we want to shed light into the how to survive and to thrive in order to have an unlimited mindset by mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. So, but limiting beliefs varies from one person to the other. My limited beliefs as a middle-aged American, been here for 36 years, that immigrated, left everything behind. My limiting belief, it doesn't mean I lived in the Middle East. It doesn't really is limiting beliefs for you. For example, I would never go back and live in the Middle East ever again. There's no way for me to do that. I can visit for a while, but it sounds like some of your generation would love to go live there, which is fine. But what's limiting for me doesn't mean it's limiting for you. What's limiting for you doesn't mean it's limiting for me. And we do get influenced by our tribal connection, by our stories and our memory. We do get influenced by that. But don't limit your creativity to create your own concept. You create your own values. And that's the purpose of the series, is to help you guys uncover and discover different ways that will serve you well in order to be empowered and fulfill your dreams. All right, we are getting close to the end of the hour. Any final thoughts and words, Yusef?
I was just going to say, very well said. And I know the constant theme, for example, with myself, my family, was survival. But these stories are not just about survival. And I think Dr. Slava kind of pointed that out, right? They reflect a broader human experience of navigating change, loss, adaptation. And hopefully we kind of exemplified that today to our audience with this discussion. So thank you so much again.
Oh, you are more than welcome. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Yusef. And thank you for all the listeners and all the watchers that have joined us on this episode. And as a quick reminder, these episodes are going to be on all the podcast platforms, available for you to listen to wherever you are, whenever you want it. And also it is going to be available on the YouTube channel by the MM360 Global Movement. So please remember, I hope this was very helpful to you. And if you are watching or listening, feel free to comment. Let us know what you guys want us to focus on, because obviously we won't be able to do this without you. And please remember to continue sharing your stories, because that's how we preserve humanity. Humanity depends on our stories, the lessons and the inspirations and the motivations we give each other with these stories. So for the sake of humanities, please keep telling your stories, and happy listening, happy watching, and have a great time with these episodes, I hope. And goodbye, and hope to see you soon. This is Slava the Jordanian. Bye now.
Thank you.